I hear the pressure people pray throughout the world this holy day.
And Merry Christmas from all of us here at AFA and Focal Point in particular. Those are the Christmas stylings of Keith and Christian Getty off of their Christmas album. Got an Irish feel to it. I want to finish up kind of on our fiscal cliff and debt ceiling segment today, just bringing some information about that. And let me do a quick double check. I don't think I've got any more sound bites in the roster that I want to run on that. We're going to shift here in a second to that Michigan situation. But I do want to talk as we get into this segment about, speaking of Christmas giving, our naughty and nice list. One of the nice things that you can do for Christmas is to give to our Christmas Critter campaign. We're doing this in partnership with Gospel for Asia. Interviewed John Riley for an entire segment about this yesterday. Here's an opportunity for you to give a Christmas gift that'll change the life of a poor family in India, Sri Lanka, or Nepal forever. I mean, for the rest of their lives, the rest of history, their time on earth, and for eternity, because these gifts, whether it's a pair of chickens, whether it's a goat, whether it's a water buffalo, whether it is a sewing machine, whether it's a pair of pigs, whether it's a biosand water filter, whether it's a rickshaw, gift is delivered. 100% of it goes directly to the field, and it's delivered by a local pastor. So they're exposed to the gospel, have an opportunity to become an active part of the body of Christ. So go to AFRnet for more information, AFR.net. You'll see the catalog. The options range all the way from a pair of chickens for $11. That's a source of 200 to 300 eggs a year. They produce chicks. They can be a source of nourishment, a source of income. So even for $11, you can change the life of a family, all the way up to a Jesus well, which is a gift of $1,000. That will provide clean drinking water and water for cooking for an entire village. You can do the same thing for a family with a biosand water filter for just $30, and 100% of what you give goes directly to the field. So we encourage you to do that. Go to AFR.net, our Christmas Critter campaign with Gospel for Asia, and change the life of a poor family in Asia forever. Now, back to this. In fact, speaking of charitable deduction, Politico's got an interesting piece today, and I want to take a minute to kind of walk through it with you, because Politico leans left in their political orientation, and President Obama has been actively talking about capping deductions for charitable giving at like 28% or something like that. So he wants to limit what the wealthy can give to charitable enterprises, to private charities. He wants to put a stop to that. He's opposed to that. Now, the reason is very simple. He'll never admit it, but the reason is very simple. He does not want people dependent on private charity. He doesn't want people dependent on their families. He doesn't want them dependent on their faith communities. He doesn't want them dependent on private charities in their own communities. He wants them dependent upon him. He is Barack the Benevolent. He wants everybody to look to him like we used to look to God for whatever we need. So he wants private charities to go the way of the dodo bird. He wants them out of here. He wants them to go the way of the Obamadon. You know about that? Did you know about that extinct lizard that has been named after President Obama? I kid you not. It's a slender-jawed extinct lizard been named after President Obama, and it's extinct. So President Obama wants these private charities to go the way of the Obamadon, this extinct lizard for whom he was named, by capping deductions on charitable giving. And even Politico was out there today, a piece by Lauren French, saying, look, this is a bad idea. Here's an excerpt from her column. Of all the tax breaks on the fiscal cliff chopping block, the 95-year-old deduction for charitable giving would seem to stand a particularly good chance against budget cutters. That's because it works. This is Politico, wanting to protect the ability of people to give money to their churches and private charities and get a deduction for it. Why? Because it works. Unlike with many of the tax loopholes being targeted for changes, years of research and polling have found that allowing Americans to deduct a percent of their charitable gifts from their tax bill not only cuts their tax liability, it also makes them more generous than they otherwise might be. In other words, it provides an incentive to good behavior. And if we're going to have any sort of incentives in the tax code, then that's what they ought to be. They ought to be incentives that reward good behavior. There ought to be an incentive in there, for instance, for having children. And that's what President Bush did. He doubled the child tax credit as part of his tax reform in 2001, 2003. That's good. That's an incentive for people to have more children. We want people to have more children. It's a good thing. We want to provide a tax break for couples who get married. We want there to be an incentive for them to form marriages and form intact families where they can raise the children that they produce together. That's good. If we're going to have them, and I'm not saying we ought to have them, but if we do, at least let's have incentives that reward and incentivize good behavior. And so again, Politico specifically mentions that Obama's out there trying to, he's not trying to eliminate it exactly, but he's trying to cap it. And it's interesting, just the language here. Here's paragraph, 6 or 7 in here. It says this, it's termed a tax loophole by some. Again, you hear this word loophole. Everything now is going to be a loophole to people that want to raise taxes on upper income. It's no longer going to be a deduction. That word is going to vanish from the vocabulary of the left. It's going to all be loophole, loophole, loophole. You hear the word loophole, it's a sinister word. It sounds like somebody that's cheating. It sounds like somebody's getting away with something. It sounds like somebody's gaming the system. This is not a loophole. It is a deduction that incentivizes charitable giving. And we want more charitable giving. You get more of whatever you reward. Now, it's interesting. They just can't help themselves because she says, doesn't even realize what she's doing. The deduction will take $246.1 billion out of the federal treasury over the next 5 years. Now, did you catch that? She says this deduction will take $246.1 billion out of the federal treasury. Now, do you realize how much is wrong with that statement? And she just writes it in passing, doesn't even realize what she's doing. The implication is if this deduction is taking money out of the treasury, that it is in the treasury to begin with. You see that? But it's not there. It never went into the treasury. That's the whole point, is to keep the government from getting their filthy hands on this money and to put it to some kind of productive use. It never got into the treasury in the first place. And it's presented as a cost to the federal government. As if, and see the implication here, and this is what she doesn't realize she's doing, and this is typical of people on the left, they believe that the government owns all your money. It's not your money, it's their money. They own it all. It's all theirs. And in their benevolence, they are going to allow us to keep a certain percentage for ourselves, but they are the ones that are going to decide when we have enough money. Remember, Barack Obama says they've got enough money. They don't need any more money. So he feels it's his right to decide how much money you and I ought to be able to keep of the money that we have earned. Now, this deduction has been in the tax code since 1917 because it has broad support from the country's charities and foundations naturally. And there are about 1.2 million of these around the country. So they're all going to take a hit if Barack the Destroyer gets his way. What he's going to do, Barack the Destroyer, is going to destroy private charity. He's going to destroy charitable institutions. He's going to destroy charitable foundations. Indiana University found that for every 1 cent in additional tax benefit, donors increase contributions by slightly more than 1%. So it incentivizes more charitable giving. For every dollar deducted, communities see $3 in benefits. So for every dollar that a giver gets to deduct from his tax income, the community experiences $3 in benefits. Now, up until 1986, which is the last scrubbing of the tax code, and this is under Ronald Reagan now. So remember, not even Ronald Reagan was Ronald Reagan all the time. Last time the tax code was scrubbed in 1986, up to that point, before Reagan got his hands on it and signed this into law, any taxpayer could claim a charitable contribution on their return. Didn't matter whether you itemized your deductions or not. There was a separate place where you could deduct whatever you gave in charitable contributions. But under Reagan, And the scrubbing of the tax code in 1986, that all went away. The only people that qualified after that were people who itemized their deductions. So interesting. Politico even out there saying, look, we got to resist Obama on this charitable tax deduction deal. Now, 21%, speaking of the economy, 21% of small business owners are saying they're going to cut their workforce in 2013. This is the lowest level of confidence on the part of small businesses that they've had since August of 2003. And what pulled them out of that hole were the Bush tax cuts, 2001, 2003. So don't let anybody tell you that we're in some kind of a recovery. 21% of small business owners, remember, this is where 70% of the jobs come from, is small business. Here's another part of the Obama tax code that's lethal. This is the death tax. Obama's proposing this it goes back into effect on January 1. And listen to this. This legislation, and there's legislation that's going to go back into effect on January 1, but Harry Reid wants to bump the death tax rate to 55%, and he wants to lower the threshold of an estate to $1 million. Now, this is going to threaten 526,421 family farms, which is about 25% of all of the farms in America. So you have these family farms. Guy's built this farm. He's farmed it for all of his life. He wants to pass it on to his kids. He dies. They place a value on land, buildings, and livestock. And if it's over $1 million, then the family that inherits the farm, they got to cough up 55% of the value. Well, they don't have it. They're land rich but cash poor. So what happens is these farms and ranches are going to have to be sold to satisfy the insatiable greed of the Democrats in Washington, D.C., like Harry Reid. So where's the greed? The greed is not with the job creators. The greed is with Democrats and bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. It's never enough with them. That's where the greed is. Yeah, we got a greed problem, not with the job creators. It's with bureaucrats and politicians in D.C. Focal Point AFR Talk. Back in 2.